as the war between Russia and Ukraine enters a delicate phase. Amid renewed expectations for potential peace talks, an unexpected information bombshell has exploded. 4 Russian hacker groups, Killnet, PO, UserSec, and Beregini, claim they had successfully breached Ukraine's general staff system, seizing terabytes of classified data. They then released what they allege is a casualty roster containing the names of more than 1.7 million Ukrainian soldiers killed or missing over the past 3 years, complete with names, addresses, and even family contact information. Kyiv immediately dismissed the disclosure as nothing more than information warfare. Yet, paradoxically, these same officials had earlier circulated claims that Russia itself had lost up to 1 million troops. The contradictions only deepened following a recent body exchange. Reports indicated that 20 Ukrainian soldiers' remains were traded for just a single Russian soldier. By mid-2025, Moscow had already handed over more than 6,000 Ukrainian bodies in various exchanges, while Kyiv had returned only a handful of Russian remains. The asymmetry has fueled a pressing question: who is truly bearing the heavier losses? The alleged leak paints a devastating picture. According to the hackers, Ukraine recorded 118,500 dead or missing in 2022, 405,400 in 2023, 595,000 in 2024, and already 621,000 in just the first 8 months of 2025. Beyond the raw numbers, the files included detailed records of the deceased, names, addresses, circumstances of death, and relatives' contact information. Critics asked, how could such data exist with such precision unless it originated from Ukraine's own servers? Adding to the shock, the hackers claimed to have extracted records of military aid shipments from 43 countries, including the United States, Germany, Poland, and Canada, detailing tanks, armored vehicles, artillery, and ammunition. Even smaller or less expected allies such as Kosovo, Croatia, and Georgia appeared in the files. The hackers said the trove was stored on Microsoft OneDrive and was compromised through the government computer of a senior Ukrainian logistics officer. Meanwhile, Ukraine's leadership continues to insist that it is Russia suffering catastrophic losses, with claims of millions of Russian casualties. Yet the realities on the ground, such as the body exchange ratios, tell another story. In one striking development, Moscow reportedly handed former President Donald Trump a list of over 1,000 Ukrainian prisoners of war, whom Kyiv had refused to take back in one-for-one swaps. For many observers, this raised uncomfortable questions. If the Ukrainian government appeals to the world to save its people, why would it decline to reclaim its own captured soldiers? Some argue that Kyiv may simply be unable to acknowledge the true scale of losses for fear of domestic backlash. Western capitals, however, continue to promote a different narrative. From Kyiv to Washington, Berlin, and Brussels, the refrain remains consistent. Russia is exhausted, Ukraine is regaining ground. Yet these latest disclosures from Russian hackers have cast doubt on that portrayal, forcing the global public to reconsider whether the war is being prolonged to sustain a Western political vision rather than to achieve a viable peace. From Moscow's perspective, the conditions are clear. There will be no peace deal unless Ukraine agrees to demilitarization and renounces NATO membership. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Naryshkin reiterated that only a neutral, non-nuclear, non-aligned Ukraine could make peace possible. In other words, the Kremlin views Kyiv's NATO ambitions, long marketed as Ukraine's European dream, as an absolute red line. On the Western side, the debate has grown urgent. In Washington, Berlin, Paris, and London, emergency consultations have intensified. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has publicly demanded clarity within 7 to 10 days from his Western allies, warning that vague promises and empty communiques are no longer enough as Russian airstrikes intensify. In response, American and European military leaders have floated 3 options. 1. Deploying a U.S.-commanded European peacekeeping force into Ukraine. 2. Refraining from boots on the ground, but providing advanced air defense systems and potentially enforcing a U.S.-led no-fly zone. Or 3. Dramatically increasing intelligence sharing and military training to allow Ukraine to operate more independently. Still, disagreements remain sharp. France's Emmanuel Macron and Britain's Keir Starmer appear ready to back bolder measures, while Germany's Chancellor Frank Moos is cautious, mindful of the immense costs and the risk of sending tens of thousands of troops into an already unpopular war. German military unions have openly warned that any peacekeeping deployment could face both budgetary and political resistance at home, where war fatigue is rising. Across the Atlantic, Donald Trump is carefully shaping his image as a would-be peace negotiator, keen to score political points ahead of the midterm elections. But this raises a perilous dilemma for Kyiv. If Washington, for domestic political reasons, pursues a quick fix settlement, Ukraine may be pressured into signing a deal heavily tilted toward Moscow. Even Ukrainian officials admit privately that they fear Washington could favor expediency over justice. At its core, this crisis has evolved far beyond a Russia-Ukraine conflict. It has become a defining security test for Europe and the United States. Russia demands a neutral, demilitarized Ukraine. Kyiv insists on NATO membership as its guarantee of survival. Washington and Brussels remain caught between rhetoric, budgetary limits, voter fatigue, and political infighting. And so, the path to peace remains obscured. One truth, however, is undeniable. If neither side yields, the price will continue to be paid in blood and tears by millions of soldiers and by a Europe haunted by the shadow of war.